In this video help tutorial, I'm on the Xcode simulator. I wanted to show you the difference in the clarity of the Xcode as opposed to an actual iPad or iPhone application. When it's running on Xcode, the text is not that clear and the colors are diminished. And you can see some color here. There's also supposed to be a color up in this field up here. But nevertheless, let's address the actual invoice and how it works. And as I'm doing that, I'm going to bring to light some of the things about the using the iPad that are different than using a desktop application. To start with, the actual information that you're using in this screen was created in the client data screen, and it puts in the header. Basically, when you come to the invoice and you're looking at the invoice, you already created the header, and I'm going to go over and show you what I'm talking about. We're going to go back to the technical data. We're going to come over here and we're going to look at the work order invoice. And in the work order invoice, these are the headers where you pick the file you're in. When you create the actual new record, it's going to pick up the invoices for this particular individual. In this case, we've got Harry Smith. If I go out to the list view and then change to another client, let's go out to support list view, and instead of Harry Smith, I'm going to go up to Alan and go back in, then come back in and look at the work order invoice, and you'll note that these are all Alan Green's invoices. The first thing I want to point out in this is that you can see the consistency of information for one individual on each record. So each invoice that they have in the system will be shown in this screen. If you wanted to go back to the work order list view and pop up the screen, you can go back in and you can edit that particular record you're looking for. Now in this case, we didn't notice the color in there before. It seems like the simulator is being a little fickle today as far as the what it's showing in the information. So let's go in and we'll actually edit in Alan Green and look at the invoice that he did. And this was in that record for Alan Green on the data screen, where when you open up over here, it's going to come up and it's going to show you that screen that you created in the data screen. I want that very clear. So once again, it's the data screen where each individual client has their own invoices and they're shown in this screen, and you use the list view to pick the one you want to actually view. Now, each time you have a data screen individual, he may repeat and have a different ID, and I want to point that out also. So for example, let's say we did some work for Alan and we were over there for a day or two or whatever, and we created a number of invoices for what we were doing for him. If you are looking at work order invoice number 1 in this particular case, and it shows over here work order number 1, if Alan had another appointment and a different time for a different thing, product or whatever it is, then it might not be the same work order ID. So you have to look in the list view to pick out the one you want by the date that you want, and that would be his invoices for that particular record. So in essence, when you're looking at item ID or client ID number 1 and work order ID number 1, and this is going to change, that's why I've got it in there, it will change each time you create another new Alan Green invoice. The work order ID will change, and the next sequential work order number will be in here. And the PO number now is a little bit different. What the PO number is, as we were doing in the main screen on the data screen, we were assigning the individual invoices with a number, sequencing each time when you're whatever record you're in, it'll be the next sequence invoice PO number that goes in there. Now you can create whatever sequence you want. You're not required to have the thing I did in here where I went 1, 2, 3, 4. I created that just to have something in there. So on your system, when you're using it on this application, you can start out with a sequence of 1 if you wanted to, or you can, if you have a current PO ID number that you're using on your invoices, you can go in and use whatever the next invoice is going to be and start pumping those into here as far as the next thing you're going to be creating in the data screen for invoices. Now, work order invoice, it's a work order and an invoice. Basically, you're working off the client ID, the work ID, work order ID, and then the PO number, which segments out each individual invoice under Alan Green ID number 1. If you create another new work order invoice for him on the same project tasks, then this would be the next sequential invoice that you're going to create in the data folder. or data screen. Okay, so with that being said, let's look at the components of this screen. The first thing we have is data up in here that really, when you pick the guy in the main screen and put it in, like here's Alan Green and Harry Smith, which are the only ones currently in there, you do not edit this, but it allows you to see the actual persons or people that are available to you. You don't use that to create the invoice here. It's already done for you when you did the data screen input of the person and created the first invoice there. Okay, so this information is not new. It came from the data screen. The only thing that's not complete in this particular screen right here is you didn't add your business information, and you would do that when you get into the application. And this is called a global field, so whenever you put this in here, it's going to put it in every invoice that is seen thereafter. So when you print this screen or print the invoice that you're looking at right here, that invoice will have the information for your store or your business or what it is that you're putting up in this screen area up here. It's not a lot of space, but you can put in there obviously the name of the business, maybe the telephone, and or whatever you want to put up in there. Just enough to significantly tell by the invoice what business you are and who you are that did this invoice. Okay. As you add information to the portal down here below, which is the work effort that you're doing, it's related to the type of work that you're doing. In this case, here's some labor, and here's the oil filter that we were working a little while ago with. And these are the only three things in the inventory system at the current time. So that's all you're going to see here. When you actually drop in an item, you're going to be coming down and clicking on this. And what it's going to do, it's going to pop up what is in the inventory system and allow you to pick the thing that you want, and you basically do like you've always done. Of course, there's only 4 items in there right now, so it's hard to scroll when there's nothing below this. But it would scroll through, and in this particular case, if you're working with the field, you can type the first characters of this. For example, if I typed the O, it's going to segment down and actually pick up the O, but you need to put enough information in it for it to know what you're actually picking. So in this case, when I go back to this field, let's go out of it and then come back over to it. You'll see that it now should have the outside services list item. And when you pick that, it should have put it in. There you go. Now put it in there like it's supposed to. And in this next field, we're going to put the outside services once more in there for what this is. The first one is the actual outside services list item. And as you look at the top of the screen, you'll see up here that this is the item part number and this is the actual description. So when you're looking at this and you pick it, and you can, so it's going to pop up, then this would be different. This is outside services. And when I pick that, it's going to throw in outside services, where this is an abbreviation for the actual description, a short version of it. In this area right here, under the work task, what we're going to be doing is put what we're going to be doing for outside services. In this particular case, if we had a company outside that was doing a specific thing that your company's not going to do, maybe you take something to a welding shop to have say, for example, a bracket being repaired. Well, you would type in here, James Welding Company will repair the bracket number and by the part number, whatever it is, and in this particular case, so that you know what the outside service was on and what part that was for the outside services. The next thing you would do is you'd put in the item quantity that you're actually working on. You can see it comes up with a numeric keyboard, and we're going to say 1. And then we're going to go into the price. And in this particular case, what we're going to do in here is it says item price. So we're going to pick up outside services. Well, in this particular case, outside services is whatever it costs. So, for example, if we're doing a bracket, it would be whatever it is. You know, if it cost $100 to repair it, that's what you'd put in here, and then it would give you a line total. And then over here, you would have a status that is, you can edit the values or add them to here, so you can modify this. Currently, obviously, when you click on it, it's going to pop up a list, and you can go in and edit that list to put in whatever you want as far as what kind of status it might be. In this particular case, we would say outside service repair, and that would be what that particular status might be, but it might be something else. In this case, we have an item pending, an item complete, a task cancel, and an item cancel. You can put in there, I don't know, whatever it is outside service repair, which sounds like a good thing to put in there. You just go ahead and use the keyboard and put it in. You can drop this down and also leave this up here where you can save it. That's important. Once you edit it, you need to save it In this case, I'm just going to say cancel and take it down. And in this case, the item pops back up to allow you to pick whatever you just added to it, or you can go back in and edit it some more. Pretty straightforward stuff. I mean, it's really not that difficult to understand what we're doing in this invoice. Now, I want to point out also, and I'm going to go back and do this, to the, whoops, pull it down so we can get the things there, to the app, to the technical data. When you receive this application, it will have the data in it that is sample data. What you're going to need to do is go ahead and put in your first record, put your own information in here. It's called overwriting the information. Go ahead and overwrite it. And then down here on these records, if you go into the portal itself, you can go in there and either edit the information in the row in the application or add a different photo. And in this particular case, when you change 1, 1, and 2, which are the IDs for this guy, in the different records, it's now going to read a different person in there. And this, you would replace it by just adding another one by saying replace it and pick out of your photo library. You're going to pick up, you can either do auto signature in a field, you can do a photo, music, and files. And I've explained earlier that if you're doing something like a photo or whatever, it'll open up and it'll offer you the fields for getting in there. You can say OK for the photos. In this particular case, because this is on the simulator, you're not going to have any photos in there yet. If you're in a work site and you're doing something and you have something you want to look at as far as keep in memory as far as what the item was you're putting in and taking out, you could take a picture of the actual, say like the serial number label on the thing and put it into this. And that would be for this task that you're working in, this technical task. And for the detail information over here, we already covered this in an earlier video, but the detail information for that would be in here. Now, the reason I'm going back here and explaining some of this is that you need to overwrite this information and overwrite this information to be actual record information that you want to use. You could backspace this out if you need to, or for the first record and the second record. I try to put as little as possible of example data stuff in here. And also you need to be aware that there may be something in the actual row data, and you might have to replace this as well. Okay, so, and the thing about the PO numbers, like I was alluding to, if you want to change the sequence for these particular items, you're going to have to do that here and then pick whatever the status is that you want to change it to for your records, your actual records that you're working within. So if I clicked on it, I would just go ahead and go in there and work on it. You can see that I can pull it up and view it as far as finger gestures that are not included in the desktop version. So if I look in here now, I can go ahead and make the changes I need to, and I can say edit it, and then go back in and edit the information in the portal record over here as far as whatever the PO number is that I want to change. Okay, this is the purchase screen for that purchase information. So let's go back over to here, technical data. Once again, if you triple tap finger, it'll go back to the full size like it's supposed to be. In some cases, it's almost nice when you can do it in your own thing. See how clear the text is now? Very, very clear as far as the text is concerned. And so the simulator is not really good at that, backed off distance, but it's sure clear when you zoom in on it. And obviously, we were working in the work order information as far as that was concerned. We'll double click, and it works the same way. It pops it back, and then you can look at it. Now, at the header portion of the work order invoice, this is what you'll see until you actually go into the work order. When you add a new work order, this information is not changed in here. This is actually the summary information within the invoice. If I go back over to Alan Green, go into here, you're looking at this information right here at the top of the screen. This is all calculated information by whatever you put in the portal. So if you put in a task that you're working on, like the last one we were starting over here, and let's say this is $100 work order, and I put that in there, and then I go ahead and go back up here. But before I do that, I want to point out some things. You can use this to go to previous and next fields as you're working through, or you can go to the top of the record, which would take you all the way to the top. This particular thing would change between the record you're viewing and the last record. This is a very interesting thing right here. This is something that allows you to click on here and go backwards and forwards. And currently we only have 2 invoice records in the system, and I'm on the second one of that. Now if you do a find, what it's going to do, say I went out and I picked this record, it would go down to 1, and that this would be record 2 of 2 records. This is be number 1 or 2, whatever one I'm in. And this over here would show as omitted. And we explained omitted in an earlier view that this is the record that is not in current selection, which means basically it needs to either show all to bring them back. And you can do that to show them all by going over to the, first of all, I have to get out of the dialog, and then go back up here to the top of the screen. And then it would go do action and then show all records. That would bring all the records back after you did a find for an individual record. Now, looking for information, keep in mind, like we explained before, you can search in all these fields here or anything that's over here and use it as a find. You have to go to the portal record for the work order invoice in order to do a find for records that are related to all the client's information for all the invoices. But we haven't talked about this. There's also a work order report that we're going to be going through as soon as I conclude this part right here. You can also view, if you need to, the individual PO records, and what it is, this is the purchase order or work order record rather, and the PO number for that particular work order. You see here it's 34 and there's 34. So there's only 2 of them available currently right now. Okay, that's more of a helper to know what the next one is if you're in the invoice and you want to go over here and look and add the next sequence or change the sequence here to for some reason. Okay, the next thing we want to do is up here it says the current status of this particular work order, and you wait for it to pop down. It says new work order, pending work order, cancel work order, and of course you can edit this just like all the other ones and add whatever you want and then save it, close it, and then you'd come back out here and it would be back into the list, and then that thing that you added would be available for you. Okay, so this is also a portal, so you can have an endless number of work orders that you're working on and be able to see them all in here. As far as what this is the information for the inventory portal. Okay, and this is almost made a mistake there. This is the inventory portal, and this will list every kind of item that you have currently in your inventory. The purpose of this is if you're working in here and you're going to an item and you find that it's not in the inventory. So if I'm looking for something and it's XYZ and it's not listed here, and these are all in alpha numeric order, if for some reason I did not see the item that I want to use in here, go back to the data screen and add that inventory item into the inventory button at the side of the screen for the inventory. Then you can go to the actual inventory thing using the portal ID, or from here, for example, if I wanted to go to this particular record, I could go in there and see all the past usage of labor, electrician, or electrical, and I'd be able to see where it was actually used. And if I wanted to, I can go to the particular work order where that item, this line item is, because every time this is used, it's going to go to a different record. So if I went to this one or this one, it would take me to where that particular item is used in the work order. And up here, you're going to see the standard price for selling, the standard cost that you buy it at, and then you're going to see the part number and the part description up here and a picture of the item, and then vendor notes over here like we talked about before, and then there's a product status. If this is a discontinued item for whatever reason, you could use this to add a new item or discontinued, and the same thing, edit the values, add whatever you want. Okay, now let's go back to the work order invoice and cover the last item. So this is all the inventory items that you're working, and you can navigate to any one of those from this screen. And the whole idea is that if you're over here and you want to add one and it's not here, then you add it in the inventory system. And then of course you can always check to see what this price is for this. Standard price when you're selling it is in there. Now in this particular case, outside services unknown. Labor would be whatever the individual labor person is in this particular case. So if I was using Wayne Jones or somebody, I make it up, that particular labor rate may be different than one of the other employees. You might have 3 or 4 or 10 or 100 employees that are in here, and whatever one that you're going to use, then you'd want to have the rate that they're working at as far as the labor, standard price labor rate. Okay? Pardon me. I kind of screwed that up. It is the standard price for the item that's in here. Okay. That being said, there are some things like the the outside services that would not have a value in there. And you could always go back into the record and look and see what it's all about. Standard price, and then cost. And down here at the bottom, you're going to see the summary of cost for all the work orders and the quantity of usage. In this particular case, there's only one been used. And this next record would preset the information. As soon as a new record is created, it'll drop another one down, and you can have another one with the presets in it. Okay, let's go back, and now what we're going to do is go to the work order list view. We're going to be coming back to the other one. So for every work order that's in here, you're going to see the guy, the date of the work order number, the PO number. Remember, we're talking about each one of them might be different. There might be this particular date, we might have 2 work orders with different sequential numbers as far as the PO numbers. And then the summary total of the record itself. I'm going to go in there and show you that. The summary total is related to the subtotal for the record, which is without tax, and there's the tax, the amount due, and the balance due in this particular case. Here's the total of the record, 413 with the tax that's in there. In this particular case, it summarizes to more digits, so you can understand if there's say like an over a penny or under a penny when you finally pay for it. You can look over here and you can see that it's a fractional amount on the tax when it calculated 2%. So in this case, it'd be actually $8.09, but it's going to round up to the next higher number because it's almost another penny. So the amount due, you just go in there and you add the amount due. In this particular case, it'll be calculated with the tax in it. In this case, the amount paid is the critical one here. If you have $413 due, you need to either put in the whole $413. In this case, $110 was added, so it took it down to $303 and no cents. Now, there's a little bit of inputting to do in here, but most of this is calculated for you, so you don't have to kind of sit down with a calculator and figure it out. It's all done for you. Now, the next thing is we already did the inventory thing. We went through what you're adding here. Now, this particular record stops at this number of items. In most cases, if you need to have another invoice or work order, it has this many lines, and then you would create another work order invoice if you had to do the balance of these. You would use the next PO number in sequence, like 1235 and so forth. And just use this as an example. Is there a 1230? Yeah, there is a 1235, so it has to be 1236. So you have all that in here. If there's a large number of work order invoices in here, click on this, you click into any field, and then click on this. It'll go to the last record. So if this was out of sight, it would go all the way to the last one, so you can see the next sequential number that is supposed to be added. Okay. So we got all that down. Now, just as a recap before we leave here, because we're not coming back, you have the header that was created actually within the data screen up here. All the calculations are done on this screen by assembling the information for the actual tasks that you completed and putting the proper information in for the items in the inventory or the labor items that you put in here or outside services that you put in there. And that would be summarized at the top. It'll do whatever, and this is also a pop-up. You can put whatever tax rate you're actually using in a decimal and in the place. Like this is actually 1%, 5%, 2%. So those would, how you put them in would be, let's edit them and you can see that. That's how they're put in. But they will calculate, if you look at the actual screen, it'll come back and it'll show it as 2%. You can see a little decimal point there. It's kind of hard to see. And this is also fractional, so you can see if you're putting in a, say like your tax rate is 5.692 or something like that, it'll summarize it down to 3 digits. And the same thing over here when it's doing the tax calculation. Okay, we've pretty much looked through this and passed through everything. What we're going to do, by the way, you can't edit these, we're going to talk about the work order report. This is the last thing in the database that is in here as far as what is in there. When you come to this screen, what are you supposed to do? Well, in this case, if you come to this screen, you need to collect the information for whatever invoices that you're looking at to get a summary total or a sub-summary total for. And in this particular case, if I wanted to get Alan Green stuff, I would go over, and there may be more than one purchase order. I'm going to explain why we're going to do this. If I went in there and I started to find, and I put in Alan in the actual name, and this is the customer. If I put in Alan, I can also go in and I can put the PO number that I want to go to if I knew what it was. You got to make sure that it is accurate in that the customer and the work order number is the appropriate one that you're going to see. For example, if you wanted Alan Green and work order number 1, 2, or whatever, you would go ahead and click in there. And then when you go to do the find, it would come up. You can put things like the PO number in there as well. If you wanted to put Alan in the specific individual invoice PO number, then it would only go to the invoice numbers for that particular job that you're doing. So maybe you only want to see one invoice in the bunch, and it's maybe 1235 instead of 12, 35, and 36. If it's all in that work order, you would just put the specific you want, or leave it blank and you'll see them all. In this particular case, I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, okay, complete the find, perform it, and you'll see that I got one record in here. Now, you'll see it says Alan Green, work order number 1, PO number such and such, and the company. And if there had been more work orders in there with a sequential number, then they would have all shown in here because we only put in Alan Green. And it gives you the summary for that total, and then it gives you the report total down here. So the report, if you had more than one work order, then you would see all the information. Now, the Run Report button, what this is going to do when you click on it, it's going to put the header back in. So if you're printing the report, for example, or you're exporting it to something, then you would have all this information shown in the record. And it repeats some of this, like for example, Alan Green, the work order date, and the work order number. It tells you the company so that you have a nice summary of information for whoever the header was for the particular job. And then what they call this the body. The body has the data that you added into the PO itself, so you can see one or more records where there were data in that particular record. And then of course the summary for the record. If you had more than one, then it would give you the summary total for all the information for each individual PO number that you have in here. And then at the end of the report, it's going to summarize all the information at the above and put the summary down here in the report order total. Now, if we go back over here now and we say show all records, then it's going to bring back all the data, and then we're going to go back in and add the headers back in, and now you see all the information that's in there. Different company, different stuff that's all going on in this record as far as the record is concerned. Okay, let's go ahead and in this case we're going to conclude the tutorial basically by explaining if you are using the application and you need assistance or you don't understand anything as far as what you're looking at, maybe in this report or some summary portion of it, you can go to ontargetsolutions.biz, go to the chat button at the bottom of the screen, and request support information or assistance with the questions you may have. You can also from there click on the request for an email to be. You can send an email or you can have me email you back. And in that case, you need to put in your email. If you do not put your email in, there's no way I can answer your questions. You can start a chat, and if we're in the office and ready to help you, we'll answer your chat and as fast as we can. If I don't answer it immediately, that means I'm online with somebody else, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But you need to leave your email. It's that simple. Okay, if you have any questions, please contact us and ask for assistance. Thank you.